Good morning, everyone. We're going to start our fair division unit today. So this will be our first lesson 3.1. So the first thing we need to talk about are the elements of fair division. And there are three underlying elements. They are the goods, and we say the goods are basically just the items that are being divided. So an example of goods would be cake. We talk a lot about cutting a piece of cake or dividing a pizza, but there could be more realistic, tangible things like a plot of land would be an example. But basically, it's whatever we are dividing. The next thing is the players. The players are just the persons participating in what is being divided. So, you and your friend sharing a piece of cake, or you and your friends, plural, sharing a pizza together. So it's just the people that are participating in what is being divided. Now, the last thing here is our value system. So basically, we're assuming that a player's internal ability to quantify gives some kind of value to the goods. So whether that be in terms of absolute terms, okay? If we think in absolute terms, we think of like money, giving it an exact value. That piece of pizza is worth $2.33 for me. So absolute terms, we're giving it some exact value, some kind of money. Okay. Relative terms, we're talking then about percentages. Okay. I value this. I give this 30% value in terms of like a 100% system. All right. So if you talk about it in terms of absolute, we're talking about like a physical number, a money value. Or if you talk about it in terms of relative terms, you're giving a percentage. All right. So the value is in the eye of the beholder. And we'll talk a little bit more about that here in a second. But, I know there's a lot of you that, let's say that you're having ice cream. Well, some people like chocolate. Some people like vanilla. And then some people do like both. But let's say you just like chocolate. Well, if somebody gives you a big old scoop of vanilla ice cream, you might still eat it, but you're not necessarily going to enjoy it as much as the person who likes vanilla. So you might give it a different value than the other person. All right. So there's some fair division assumptions that we're making. And mainly these are the assumptions about the players. Okay. So the first one is rationality. You're going to assume that each player is a thinking, rational person who is seeking to maximize. We're assuming that everyone is trying to maximize the value of whatever they're getting. Once again, kind of like the ice cream. I'm going to prefer, and if I have the ability to, I'm going to want to get the bowl that has the biggest scoop of chocolate ice cream if I like chocolate ice cream. So we're going to assume everyone's going to be trying to get their rationally try to maximize their share of the booty. All right. Then we got cooperation. And that is that players are willing participants and that they accept the rules of the game. Okay? So we're going to assume that everyone is okay with how things are being broke down here. Okay? That everyone is okay about how things are being broke down. So they are in cooperation with the rules. The next one is privacy. We're going to assume that each player has no useful information about the other players. So we just talked about me liking chocolate ice cream more than vanilla ice cream. Then we're going to assume that you did not know that tidbit, because then you know, once again, if you were being the scooping out and you knew I like chocolate ice cream better, then you would make a bowl that's all chocolate. And we're going to assume that no one knows anything about our likes or preferences. Okay? And then the last thing would be that there's going to be symmetry. And that just basically means that players have equal rights. Equal rights in sharing the goods. Okay? That everyone here basically is equal, and each player is entitled to a proportional share of S. So we're assuming that if we had two players, that someone had at least 1/2 of the whatever's being divided. Or if there's 3 players, it'd be 1/3, so on and so forth. All right. So questions there so far. All right. So I'm going to do this actually. So let's just talk about it real quick then. In terms of our guided notes here, we've talked about goods, our players, our value system, the difference between absolute and relative, and then we've talked about the assumptions of players, that they're all rational thinkers, they're in cooperation, there's privacy amongst the group, and there's also a symmetry. Everybody has equal rights. All right. Questions so far? All right. So now let's move on. We've talked about the assumptions, so let's move on to what we're talking about here, and that is what we call the fair share or fair division. Okay? Our fair share, we suppose that S denotes a share of the booty S, and P is one of the players in the fair division game within players. So a share is fair to a player if it is worth at least 1/n of the total value of the goods in the opinion of the player, where n is the total number of players. Okay? So in terms of if there are 2 of us, and I feel like we should be getting our fair share, you should feel like you're getting at least half of what is being offered. Okay? So, that's the thing. So you think that you should at least be getting half of what you are being offered. And your ideal is that you want everyone to get a fair share. So in this example here, we talk about how Paul is one of 4 players. He values S at 12%, S1 at 12% of the total S, S2 at 27% of S, S3 at 18%, and S4 at 43% of S. So fair is getting greater than or equal to what percent? Okay? So because there are 4 players, what would be deemed fair? Well, then they should each get one, at least in their opinion, 1/4, which if you think about it, 1/4 is 0.25, which is 25%, is it not? Okay, so if to be fair, they need to get 25%. So in here, then S1, he only values that it's worth 12%. S2 is 27, so that would be a fair share. S3 would not be, and S4 would be 43. Okay? So in this case, fair is greater than or equal to what percent? We said 25%. So which shares are fair to Paul? And that would be share 2 and share 4, would be the ones that Paul would deem to be fair. Okay? Like I said, it kind of goes down to, well, like, how are they not all fair? Well, like I said, if you had bowls of ice cream with chocolate and vanilla, and once again, if Paul, maybe he likes both, but he really likes chocolate a lot better, then once again, the fourth bowl over here, where it was worth 43%, might have had a lot more chocolate in it. And so he felt like he was getting his fair share. S2 was at 27%. So maybe at least, that a quarter of it was chocolate. So he at least got his favorite. And then the others were maybe a lot more vanilla than chocolate. So then he didn't feel like he was getting what he liked out of the deal. Okay? So you should be able to take a look at example 2 then. Take a look at example 2 and see what you think. All right, so in example 2 then, Jeff is 1 of 5 players. So 1 out of 5 is 0.20, which is 20%. The thing is, we need to figure out what our dollar amount was. So if you actually add all these together, then they actually total up to be $100. So in this regard, it's really easy because 20% of $100 would be $20. So Jeff deems everything that's worth more than $20 should be the fair share. So S1, S2, and S5. All right. So the last thing that we need to talk about on this first page of is our types of games. Okay. And there are 3. There is continuous. So a continuous game is where in a continuous fair division game, the set S is divisible in infinitely many ways, and shares can be increased or decreased by arbitrarily small amounts. Typical examples of continuous fair division games involve the division of land, a cake, a pizza, and so forth. Okay? So there's basically kind of infinitely many possibilities. And sometimes they're not by, it's me cutting my pizza just a hair over, even though that is a different scenario. But that's going to be continuous. Okay? Now, a discrete fair division game is when the set S is made up of an object that are indivisible, like paintings or house or boats or so on and so forth. Okay? Because unlike a piece of cake that I want to cut, cake we can cut a variety of different ways. Unfortunately, we have fair division where we have something like a house. You've lost a loved one and you're going to split the house. You can't just cut a house in the middle and say you get this half and we get this half. It just doesn't work like that. So that would be an example of a discrete scenario. Okay. And then, so basically what you're breaking up cannot be divided. And then the last would be mixed, which is some instance where you might have both. We kind of talked about it, but that might be an instance like, once again, you've someone you loved has passed away and left you a house and some money. Well, money can be kind of split, but once again, we talked about how the house cannot. So what are some ways that you could go about taking care of that? All right. So that is what we have so far in lesson 1. And now we're going to look at here some examples.